Week and the Harry Potter series. So it's really, what we're seeing in the world is that pretty much everything is a project. People come together to get something done, and that's a project.
Okay. What brought about this list? What gave you the idea for it?
Well, PMI turned 50 this year, and as we were celebrating our 50th anniversary, we thought it was a good time to take a look back at the projects that had the most influence on the world over the last 50 years, not just based on what they delivered, but for what else they enabled. For example, Atari is on the list, and that was a pretty awesome first kind of attempt at gaming, but it ushered in a gaming culture which has turned into a $150 billion industry with people that are coming together globally to play games. World of Warcraft is also on the list.
Tell me about the list. What is on there?
Well, there are. We started with a list of 1,000 projects, and we narrowed it down to these top 50. It was a difficult project in and of itself. But some of the things that you might be surprised to see on the list are something like the euro. Getting many countries, leaders together to agree on a common currency. Something like Alibaba's Singles Day, which has turned into the largest shopping day of the year in the world in not very many years. Things like the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. So all of these sorts of activities or efforts that served to change the world that we live in through being a successful project, but also kind of enabling other projects to then take their learnings and go from there. Right.
What stood out to you as you were compiling the? I take it you were one of those people involved in putting together the list. What stood out to you? What were the things that said, okay, this deserves to be on this list?
Right. I was lucky enough to be part of this project, and it was really fantastic team. I think one of the interesting things for me is. Number 50 on the list is the Sydney Opera House, and I think from an iconic architecture point of view, we all recognize it with its pointed roofs and so forth, right? But from a traditional project management perspective, that would have been considered a failed project. It was wildly over budget, and it didn't get completed until way beyond its deadline. And yet, from an influence perspective, it was incredibly influential because it changed the way we think about architecture. It changed the way we think about tourism. It changed the way we think about buildings. And that's why it made the list.
These are projects that we think of corporate, we think of industrial, we think of government, doing these big projects. Is there anything that we can take out of project management and put into our own daily lives?
Well, I think so. Just as the way organizations' strategies are delivered through projects and programs, the goals people set for their own personal lives can also be achieved using those good project management principles, things like using a disciplined approach to planning and doing, learning to be a good leader, learning collaboration skills and how to kind of motivate the people around you that need to help you create your, turn your idea into reality to move in your same direction. And I think you mentioned mindset, that mindset of continuous learning and exploration, because what worked to solve one problem yesterday probably isn't going to work exactly the same way on the next problem. So it's important to have that full backpack of up-to-date skills and competencies, and that's really what project managers, I think, bring to this.
That's Cindy Anderson, who is Vice President of Brand Management for the Project Management Institute. You're listening to the best of 2019 from Conversation Collage. I'm Ken Johannesson, and as we go on amongst our best interviews of 2019, cattle. Yes, cattle. And we talked about the beef checkoff and also what it is doing to keep consumers safe. Make sure that the beef that you buy at the supermarket or wherever is of good quality. And we talked about that with Josh White, who is a cattleman himself. He's a rancher, and he is with the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, and he talked with us about the beef checkoff, and we talked about how they keep the quality high in the beef that you buy.
What does that mean for the consumer? I mean, when they go to the store and they're at the meat counter, how do we know that the meat that we're buying has been essentially gone through a certified rancher, and is there a way to tell?
There's a couple of ways. I mean, number one, we know that greater than 85% of the beef that's hitting retail and food service is grown under BQA guidelines and from BQA farms and ranches. So number one, chances are, because of the way that the program has just permeated the industry, that beef has been handled under those guidelines. You can also go online and look at sourcing requirements from places you're buying beef. A lot of retail and food service establishments have sourcing guidelines that name BQA or quality care programs for the livestock that they purchase or beef from or meat from. So BQA is that answer. If sometimes it's in more consumer-friendly language, sometimes they come right out and say BQA.
Mm-hmm. Some ranchers, and there's some ways to buy beef direct from the rancher. Is that a good idea for consumers? Should they do that, or should they always go through a middleman, a store, or something like that?
Yeah, I think whatever you're comfortable with as a consumer. I know, growing up, we always would either process our own or go with a neighbor and process an animal, maybe get half of a beef, that kind of thing. In rural America, that's a lot more probably prevalent. But farmers markets, whatever option you choose, and yeah, if you have that in-person contact with a producer or somebody marketing beef that actually sources from a particular ranch, you can straight up ask them, are you BQA certified? Are you operating under beef quality assurance guidelines? That's certainly a legitimate question.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is something that is funded by the Beef Checkoff, and that is something that ranchers, they have to pay a certain amount per head, correct?
That's right. It's like most agricultural products have what we would call a self-help program that reinvests into education, promotion, and research. Understanding how better to grow beef, how better to cut the beef and fabricate it, and just in general deliver a higher quality product to consumers.
And that's a buck a head, if I understand correct. So it's a $1 for every head of cattle, right?
That's right. That's how it works. And then some states actually choose the farmers and ranchers there to collect additional funds. So that would be state by state, and sometimes those are used, for various purposes depending on how the program is set up. But there are a lot of states that invest more because that dollar has stayed the same, since 1986, and we all know a dollar doesn't go as far as it used to. So, yeah, a lot of farmers and ranchers have chosen to invest even more. Right.
Now, you're a rancher yourself, right? Tell me about your ranch.
I am. Yeah, I'm originally from Georgia. We've got a family farm back there between Atlanta and Macon on the sort of the middle part of the state, and it's a cow-calf operation, so we raise mama cows that have babies every year and sell them into the meat supply system. So, yeah, they're having babies right now because we calve in the fall in that milder climate, and the cattle do really great through the winter where we can still grow grass all the way through winter.
Okay. How many head do you have? Do you know?
Oh, not too many. I sold down when I moved away from Georgia out here to Denver, so I got about 20 head on the place right now.
Oh, okay. All right. You mentioned something that's always kind of curious to me. What's the difference between prime and choice?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's really a measurement of maturity of the animal, so how old they are. They can only qualify for prime if they're, I believe, under 24 months. And then the marbling within the meat. That's one of the big indicators. So again, beefitswhatsfordinner.com. You can go onto our website, find a full explanation. There's even a video about how USDA grades those carcasses and what qualifications yield a prime versus a choice carcass.
Josh White with the National Cattlemen's Beef Association there. Finally, on our list of best ofs of 2019, we talked about an upcoming physician shortage. They say that by the year 2032, there's going to be a shortage of physicians in the United States, and it could be as high as 122,000 physicians. We talked about this and how it is being met and handled with Dr. William Pinsky, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Educational Commission for Foreign Medical Graduates, and also Dr. Beatrice Wills, who is a third-year internal medicine resident at Johns Hopkins Medicine in Baltimore.
Bad news, a shortage of physicians by the year 2032. How is this happening? Medicine and healthcare is a growing field, I thought. I can't understand why there's a shortage of physicians, or there will be.
Sure. Well, healthcare certainly is a growing industry, no doubt about it. The shortage is really multifactorial. I think that we've done a good job in the last decade or so in increasing the number of both allopathic and osteopathic medical schools in the United States, as well as increasing the class sizes. However, at the same time, people like me, baby boomers, are getting older and requiring more health care. And as a result of that, the demand has gone up, and although the supply has been increasing, not at the same rate as the demand. And that's why we're seeing these projections of a significant deficit in physicians. So yes, the supply is going up, but not at the same rate as the demand, and the demand is going up partly because of the aging population.
Are we talking here, when we say physicians, are we talking about general physicians like, Dr. Welby and things like that? Is that kind of what we're talking about, rather than a specialist in oncology or osteopathy or anything like that?
Right. So you bring up Dr. Welby because I mentioned I was a baby boomer, and I would actually know whom you're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know if Dr. Wills knows who you're talking about.
Actually.
Dr. Marcus Welby was a very popular TV show in the 1970s with Robert Young.
We're talking about all of the above.
Oh.
So clearly primary care physicians, no doubt about it, but also specialist physicians as well. I don't have the exact numbers, but the last I recall is we have a significant shortage of general surgeons, for that matter. So it goes across specialties. And again, the numbers have to do with access. How long should somebody wait to get a doctor's appointment? Or how long should somebody wait to have a procedure done? And if we're talking about what we would consider optimal time for both, then we have a shortage.
Let's talk about the role of international medical graduates in healthcare. What role are they playing?
Sure. So even before this announced shortage, international medical graduates have played a significant role in the healthcare delivery in the United States since World War II. In fact, if we look at the number of licensed physicians, which is plus or minus around 1 million in the United States right now, a quarter of those have gone to medical school outside of the United States or Canada. And so for quite a while, we have been depending on importing. So we are a net importer of physicians to this.
ECFMG, for those who didn't hear earlier, the Educational Commission for Foreign Medical Graduates. Dr. Wills, I didn't mean to ignore you here, but I just wanted to set the groundwork with Dr. Pinsky here. You came from Colombia, huh?
Yes, that's right.
What brought you to the United States?
Training. I really wanted to pursue the best possible medical education. I grew up in Bogota, Colombia, but I quickly knew that I wanted to be the best possible physician and now oncologist, and I knew it was here in the United States where I could meet amazing mentors and I would have access to technologies and really high-quality care, medical education, and provide the best care to my patients.
Why oncology?
I decided oncology after my dad was diagnosed with lung cancer. I built a really strong relationship with my father's oncologist. He introduced me to this beautiful field where I satisfy my scientific curiosity and have so endless world of research behind cancer, and also have very strong relationships with my patients who have cancer.
So, Dr. Pinsky, where does ECFMG come into play with
say, Dr. Wills and others who want to pursue medical training?
So we're the agency that was founded 60 years ago to be the sole organization that